Today, on Tuesday, the 7th of May, we're going to be talking about EVs in the workplace. My name is Thor Hinckley. I'm a senior project manager here at Forth. And I wanted to spend just a little bit of time talking about Forth and what we do before we turn it over to our guest speakers. So at Forth, essentially we're a nonprofit trade association. We advocate for electric, shared, and smart mobility. We've done and continue to do innovative demonstration projects. We're advocates for electric transportation. We engage the public, we engage legislators, we engage regulators, all with a common purpose to advance electric and smart and shared transportation in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. Recently, we were also awarded a Bloomberg Climate Cities Challenge Award, which has us working in 25 cities across the U.S. We're based in Portland. We have over 160 member companies and organizations, and we're active in these four main areas: industry growth and development for electric transportation, policy advocacy, direct consumer engagement, and demonstration and pilot projects. Workplace charging is something that we've been interested in and talking to members about for a while now. And we do have a workplace charging one-pager that you can find on our website at forthmobility.org/workplace. We've done webinars, we have in-person presentations, and we also can provide advising and consulting services for organizations that are interested in moving forward toward workplace charging. One thing that we'd like to call to your attention is Roadmap 12 coming up next month in Portland, Oregon, June 18th and 19th at the Convention Center. It's one of the largest electric and smart mobility conferences in the U.S. We're very proud. We'd love to see all of you there. We continue to break attendance records. 2018 was no different. We had over 800 representatives from all over the ecosystem of shared and electric mobility. And again, we're very proud of this event. We'd love to see you there, and we think that no matter how far you come, you will find a lot of value. We have visitors coming from all over the world to attend Roadmap. So again, that's June 18th and 19th. Here in Portland at the Convention Center. So what I'd like to do now is introduce our first speaker. And Rendall Farley from Avista is the manager of electric transportation. He leads Avista's electrification and transportation strategic initiatives. He's active in researching networks with technical experts and policymakers across industry and government. He works with internal and external stakeholders to develop strong business cases, strategies, and execute operations around transportation electrification. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Rendall.
Well, thanks so much for the introduction, and what a pleasure to have the chance to talk about this topic with everybody. And I just would start by just framing this in terms of where Avista sits. Avista really has a long tradition of innovation, and as the industry changes, we want to evolve with that and help to develop it. So where new technologies and opportunities present themselves, we want to take advantage of that to better serve the customer. Customers are at the center of everything we do. And so electric transportation, in my view, should really be looked at as an emerging example of one of those opportunities, maybe one of the biggest strategic opportunities for the utility in the next couple decades to better serve our customers. And that's all customers, whether they're driving electric or not. This is really about a better energy future for everyone, moving people or things, using electricity in a way that's cheaper, cleaner, more fun, and more sustainable. Next slide, please. And you can think of that in terms of the basic transformative benefits that this presents. In our region, billions of dollars each year are spent on petroleum fuel, the maintenance of our collective fleet of vehicles. That can be dramatically reduced with the transition to electric transportation, creating a major economic ripple effect, if you will. Also, there's the opportunity to cut emissions by 80% or more from the industry sector that is the major source of emissions in our area. So this is largely due really to the inexpensive and clean hydroelectric power and natural gas that we're fortunate to have in the area. But, globally, across the board, it's just a better way. It's a cleaner way of moving people or things. And increasingly, as the grid is cleaned up, that'll be even more so. Add to this great performance, energy security, and benefits to the grid, and this is just a big win from any angle you look at it. When it comes to, excuse me, a little technical. When it comes to workplace charging, several years ago, as we looked around the landscape, one of the things that jumped out was some of the work from the U.S. Department of Energy and Workplace Charging Challenge. Their research showed that workplace charging is really effective, maybe one of the most effective ways of promoting EV adoption. It can really make or break someone's decision to get an EV or not, whether workplace charging is available where they commute to. Next slide. And so at our Mission campus, our main campus building in Spokane, Washington, we began our, this really is a utility. I think it starts at home. You got to walk the talk. And we had put in a 2-port charger out front, as well as in a couple other areas in town, but one out in front of Mission campus back in 2010. As we look at this in 2015, we had about 4 EV commuters out of a total workforce of, I think it's approximately 1,200 that come to Mission campus. And we were able to get support for a systematic workplace charging program that began that year. And here's a few kind of bullet points to show some of the information we've collected since that point. We now have 22 dedicated chargers for employees, and we're building a new parking garage. We're spread out all over the place. We're finally building a new parking garage that will have upwards of 500 parking slots, of which close to 150 ports will be available for charging, half of which will be able to be used twice per day. So we've seen with that a real increase in the number of commuters. And so while it's impossible to give a direct, relationship, number of chargers to number of EV commuters, we've definitely there's a correlation. And so that number has grown over the last few years from 4 commuters to now approaching 50. And 22 ports seems to be, a 1-to-2 ratio seems to be about right for what we're seeing. Not everybody commutes every day. Not everybody really needs to charge at work every day. And so for the mix that we've got so far from what we've seen, 1 port for every 2 EV commuters seems to match our policy goal, which is if you get an EV and you commute to work at Avista, you'll have the opportunity to charge your vehicle there. You may have to move the plug, but you won't have to call people up and move vehicles around. We don't want people spending a lot of time doing that. That ratio of 2 to 1 seems to approximate what is needed to meet that goal, at least for us. And so if you're looking at this chart here, these are some of the energy costs that we're seeing on a per commuter basis, somewhere in the vicinity of 80 cents a day. You can figure, and if you want to require a fee, then that would be roughly what you'd need to do to recoup that. So far, we have not required a fee. We look at it as a de minimis employee benefit. Next slide. So in evaluating network EVSE, something to consider here, and what we looked at based on what we've learned so far for our parking garage, this is kind of what you're looking at here in this chart, this table, for cost to maintain a network EVSE, and they're substantial. You've got network fees, you've got communication, you've got more frequent breakdowns with the electronics gear. But you do have the advantages of getting data if you need that in a more granular way, load management possibilities, and of course, point-of-use payments by the users. Next slide, though, if you consider, compare that to non-networked EVSE, both the upfront costs and the annual operating maintenance costs are very low. And as a result, then you also see higher net user fuel savings because there's not a fee associated with the transaction for user payments that you typically see for network. And while you can't get the data directly, perhaps you can have separate meters or other ways of collecting the data. You do most definitely have lower costs. It's going to be more reliable and convenient. And so in a lot of cases, but not all, in a lot of cases, non-networked EVSE may make the most sense. And if you want to require a user fee, some sort of administrative method, think of a monthly deduction of some kind, $5 to $10 a month or something, might be appropriate, which will help to offset the costs for the electricity itself. Next slide, just to kind of put it in context, workplace charging is really one of three pillars of employee engagement as EEI advocates. We're members of EEI, and I've found their resources to be quite excellent. In addition to workplace charging, we've done a fair amount of education, informational resource work with our employees, but we have not to date chosen to take on the third pillar, which is purchase incentives. When it comes to informational programs, one thing we kind of did for a while that was a little above and beyond, next slide, is a program we put together called the EV Experience. What we did is we purchased a couple of Nissan Leafs and a Chevy Volt back in August of 2016, and then offered those for a 1-week rental period for $35 a week to employees. They could take it home, let their spouse drive it, charge at work, charge at home, and really get to experience what it's like and whether that could work for them or not. And we had pretty positive results from this. We had surveys before and after. We learned a lot. But no one actually purchased a vehicle during this time, which was kind of interesting. We expected at least a few. One thing I think that helps to reinforce is the fact that purchase decision on a big ticket item like a vehicle just doesn't happen overnight. As it turns out, no one that was doing our program was quite ready to pull the trigger on that, but we have had a few since then, and I think that another survey to look at how that all transpired and whether some seeds that were planted early on with this eventually led to an earlier decision to get an EV. So that's kind of gives you a flavor of some internal programs we've done. Next slide is what is kind of a depiction of our electric vehicle supply equipment, our EV charging pilot that we've been running the last couple of years, where we've installed network chargers and non-networked in homes and businesses, collecting data, doing demand response, etc. And workplace charging is really one of the points of emphasis in this program. Next slide. This shows some of the costs that we've been able to pull down from the programs thus far. And here you show a breakdown between the network and the non-network charging. What this program really has done, though, is in a nutshell, is it made it a lot less hassle and a lot less cost for someone up front to get a charger at their home or their business. And we've seen an increase in uptake, but I don't have the information on hand as to how much the workplace charging in this program has really increased adoption at those areas. It'll be something, though, that we'll be looking at closely and documented in our final report this year. Regardless of whether you put in charging for your own employees or in a program like ours for your customers, you've got to be prepared and committed to backing these things up. And things do happen. The photo on the left here shows a charger that's been bashed by a tour bus operator and then took off. You can see part of the bumper sitting there. Yes, that really happened. And then here on the right, one of the non-network units, the cord somehow got yanked out. I really don't know how that happens, but you've got to have people ready to go fix these things. And that's just part of the deal if it's got your name on it. Next slide. I'm going to buzz through the remainder here pretty quickly. This is just a really good depiction, I think, to get your head around the different business models that might be possible in operating or offering a program to customers in terms of who's got ownership, the different components from the transformer all the way to the charger itself. our pilot program, what we've done is kind of the hybrid Model 3 there, where traditional business, the electric company, owns everything up to the meter. But then between the meter and the charger itself, that's premises wiring, the panel and the new circuit, the conduit and wiring to the charger. The customer owns that. And then we actually own and maintain the charging station. So that's been actually pretty successful in terms of uptake, because it helps to defray the cost of the charger up front. And the customer is very happy to know that the utility will back up the maintenance of that charger should anything go wrong. Next slide. Here's kind of where we're looking at strategically. We're a mid-sized utility. We're not exceptionally large when it comes to investor-owned utility, but we recognize the strategic importance of electric transportation. We intend to continue to advance our knowledge and capabilities and better serve our customers in the years ahead. And so that's my presentation in a nutshell. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Farley. Great presentation. So for the second part of our webinar today, we'd like to bring in Matt Teske. Matt is the founder and CEO of Chargeway. Chargeway is a software platform, a mobile app, and communication solution for the auto industry designed to improve the electric car customer experience with electric fueling. Using his own color and number system, Chargeway creates a simple identity for charging plugs and speed options, offering industry stakeholders and the customers an easier way to understand how electric cars are refueled. So with that, I'd like to introduce Matt Teske. Matt?
Thank you, Thor, and thank you everybody for joining today's webinar. I'm gonna cycle forward on the slides here to get to my opening slide. Again, as I mentioned, my name is Matt Teske. I'm the founder of Chargeway, and our goal is, and what we want to present today is a description of how we can translate using electricity as a fuel to the general public in a way that is easy for them to understand, and so they can transition from using gasoline, which is a rather simplified user experience, into using this new fuel type in a way that makes them feel comfortable and they can trust it. And this is based on a lot of background research as well, so I want to dive right in. One of the things I want to talk about first is consumer behavior. And every detail that Rendall just expressed with respect to Avista's workplace charging program and other programs they've put out is that we also are trying to convince people to think differently. But every single day, they have information overload. They have a lot of things that are being brought to their attention, whether it's work-related or personal life-related. And they deal with this every day, and by they, I mean us. All of us have this type of experience every day where we just have our daily lives to contend with. And so we need things to fit into it naturally and simply. And right now, for many people, most people currently still, that is the use of gasoline as a fuel for transportation. And to get away and around from that, we need to think about, well, how do people think if they're trying to do something new? And there's been a lot of studies into this, and psychologically, it's called decision fatigue, if they are pushed to the brink of their daily routine and just want to just kind of take a step back and stick with what works. And this is part of psychologically what we're coming up against with helping consumers and people in the workplace and everyday people know how to use electricity as a fuel. But decision fatigue will happen if they just simply have to stick with their daily life and stick with what works. And they will go in two routes. One of which might be they'll make a reckless decision, which might be impulsive and bad for the long run. But for them, their brain gave up and they just had to make a decision to stick on with their daily routine because they have enough to contend with. The other option they might choose is something along the lines of doing nothing. So they might just say, I want to make people feel safe and normal. I don't want to disrupt my daily routine. And so this is really the response we're going to get from average consumers who feel that how we're presenting this transition of transportation might feel to them. And if anybody doesn't believe this, we all face this every day. Well, how many times have you ended your day and your spouse has said, I want to go to the I don't care bar and grill, because they don't care where they go eat that night because they've had a long day and they just need to get on with their life. So that being said, I want to really focus on what is the fueling customer experience and really show what we're up against and trying to convince consumers psychologically how to switch over. So for every car that's existed for the last 100 years that runs on gasoline, the user experience has been fairly effortless, and we've developed it that way as a society. You can choose any gas car, and if you see a sign that says there's gas here, The user experience of when you use the fuel is going to be very straightforward and simple, and it makes for a great experience. You can trust that the car you purchased can get you where you need to go. And in the electric vehicle space, there's really only one example of a company that has created something similar, and that is Tesla. And that is because they really do have a closed ecosystem. They've developed such a way that you could purchase into their product and brand and truly trust with confidence that it will work for your needs to get you from where you are to where you need to go. And that's because inside the vehicle, there is a very simple mapping system that tells you where you can go. And when you arrive, it's the brand name of the product you're driving. And then once you hook up inside the car, it's very simple. It says, hey, come back in 45 minutes. You should go grab lunch. And that's a very easy way to understand how it meets your daily life. Whereas looking at other EVs in the market, we've made it rather difficult. We really don't have an ecosystem that works to make it friendly and inviting for consumers that are transitioning from gas to electricity. We did put up a sign that says EV charging here. However, we're treating it as if it's universal, but in reality, what they might encounter could be a variety of different shapes and sizes of stations, different plug types, different networks, and also different power levels. And they have to figure all of those things out. And that could lead to a poor customer experience if they're unprepared to do that. And we've tried to simplify how this looks and works, but what we've done is actually added a new level of complication, whereas now there's a variety of different ways of saying the same thing over and over again. So that really hasn't helped simplify. If anything, it's helped complicate. And so what this has led to is most consumers are just going to say, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to stick with gas because I have to just get on with my daily life. So what does this mean? Well, what this means is that we've actually made EVs difficult to sell, use, and enjoy. And we have to figure out a way to make them easier to enjoy so that a customer that or a consumer or even someone in the workplace who might be considering using an electric car can do so in such a way that they don't feel like it's disrupting their lives. And so in that sense, it's not really about range anxiety. We use that phrase a lot, but it's more so about pure anxiety of the unknown. Consumers don't like knowing that their life is going to change if they can't really feel confident that it's for the better. And so we really need to make them feel comfortable about this new change they're making. And with Chargeway, we focus on the consumer side, but also how do we look at this from the sales side? Dealerships and dealer sales representatives are also unsure of how to sell fuel because they've never done that before. They've been able to sell cars of any shape and size, and when you leave the dealership, they don't have to explain to you how it works to get fuel into it. It's pretty straightforward. But now they need help explaining how to use this new fuel type because it's the primary difference between a gas car and an electric car. So the goal of Chargeway, and for the industry as we see it, is that we really do need to create a better electric fuel customer experience, something that really allows consumers to transition from what they've known in gasoline to using electricity as a fuel in a way that makes them confident. And they can then be happy to purchase this vehicle, and they can trust it and know with certainty it will provide them the utility of transportation the way they've always known. And then they can get back to enjoying the car for what it is. Maybe it's more of an emotional decision that makes them want the red one. So how do we do this? Well, we feel that with Chargeway, we have developed out a solution that will work universally across all geographic locations as well as across different languages. We've taken the complicated information of the engineering that we currently utilize in our messaging, and we've converted it into something as simple as colors and numbers. So instead of trying to have the consumer populace learn things like J1772 or CHAdeMO or CCS combo for plug types, and then understand the differences between alternating current, direct current, and the hundreds of levels of kilowatt, we've broken it down into a matrix of something as easy as knowing a color and a number. Color being the plug type your vehicle uses, and the number being the power level your vehicle can either charge to or that a station will offer you when you arrive at it. So it's a visual identity system that matches the electric vehicle you're driving to the infrastructure you can use. And we've had the opportunity to discuss what we've developed with a variety of stakeholders throughout the industry. This includes manufacturers such as GM, Tesla, Ford, and others, along with utilities from across the United States as well as outside of North America, charging networks, and then also stakeholders such as policymakers, nonprofits. And the intent, obviously, is to show that we can all collectively have a better way of explaining our industry to consumers in such a way we can truly accelerate their transition from something they've known forever into something that feels comfortable and easy. And so the way we've gone about focusing the development of this has been to create a driver's experience that is effortless. They don't have to learn anything new. They feel they can just transition as if they just bought another new car they've always known. And we focused on developing this through a software platform. So the Chargeway consumer app is now available on iOS and Android. And when you download it, again, it's focused on the driver. Instead of showing where everything is and you have to filter it on your own and figure it out, and all the icons might look the same for fast charging or standard charging, we broke it down into something that is based on the car you choose to drive, because that's what each driver will want to know. They don't want to have to relearn how to use fuel. They want to know what works for me. So if you're a Nissan Leaf owner, you simply enter your vehicle and the map is automatically filtered to show what works for your car. And you can quickly identify what the maximum charge level is at any station on the map that matches your car's capability. And this is the same for every vehicle. If you're driving a Tesla, same thing. The map is customized to you based on the color of your plug type. And then if you're driving a Chevrolet Bolt EV, similarly, same thing. The colors match your vehicle plug type, and then you know what your power level is as well. And so within this, we wanted to really answer the questions. And the important questions we found in our research from the general public, not from early adopters, but from average consumers, was because they found out that things are not universal, they wanted to know some basic information if they chose an electric car. First being, well, which one do I use? Based on the car that I decide I want to buy, make it simple for me to see which station I can use, and I can then know I'm not going to be stranded, or I know when I arrive, I'll at least have something as an option. So that was the first question. They just wanted to make it transparent. What does my car use? Second question was, well, once I know what I use, I need to know how long this takes, because with fueling and gasoline, it's as simple as remembering how to pour a liquid into an empty space. But with charging and the intangibles that go along with it, they need to know how it impacts their daily life. And so with the power levels we've developed through Chargeway, you begin to get a branded sense for what it is your charging experience will be at any of those levels based on the car that you drive. And so this creates a user experience that they will use maybe a level 4 with their Bolt, and they'll begin to understand that when they're at a level 4, what their average charge time might be based on their state of charge. And that will be different for every single driver because charging is not identical across the board. The last question was, when they know what stations they use and how long it'll take, they simply want to say, well, okay, how can I use this car like I've used any car? Where can I go? And so we developed out a trip planner that guides any driver through network charging stations so that they have support along the way, and it's transparent. It'll show them which stations they're recommended to stop at to make their trip. It also estimates the charge time. And if a vehicle cannot make a trip that they do try to plan, it will actually tell them in advance, this vehicle will not make this trip. You should try a different route, or maybe even look for a different vehicle if you want to make this trip. And so we want to create transparency around what it means to use electricity as a fuel depending on the car that you drive. And so who benefits from this solution? Well, we look at it as a universal solution that connects industry stakeholders. And so we focus truly on the customer experience in the heart of the industry, which is when dealerships are selling the cars, when charging networks are deploying infrastructure where you would charge your vehicle, and also especially for public utilities who play a very important role in this conversation for branding electricity as a fuel. And so one of the first steps you might see with that is how a public utility could let the world know that electricity as a fuel is now available. Because consumers do understand that cars exist, but they really do not understand that this new fuel type is an option or how to engage with it. And utilities can play a very important role in how this transitions them from simply being an energy provider to being a fuel provider. And that's what we really need consumers understanding and embracing simply. Next would be dealerships. We have a solution for auto dealers called the Chargeway Beacon. It is a 43-inch touchscreen kiosk that is the exact same interface we have in our smartphone app that allows for a simplified way to explain every vehicle's fueling type for an electric car at every single dealership. So if you're at a Nissan dealer, the information is tailored to Nissan vehicles, whereas if you're at a Honda dealer, same thing. And this allows for easier dealership training. We need dealers to know how to sell an electric car, and they're great at selling cars, but the word electric is where they get confused. So we can create a language by which they can explain electricity as a fuel very easily based on the cars they offer in their showroom. So it incentivizes them to sell their brand. And this is where utilities can support the auto dealers in a way to say, well, we know how to explain our fuel type now. Let's provide you with some solutions. And with the charging networks, we see an opportunity to allow them to maintain their brand identity. They do come in different shapes and sizes, but at least provide transparency at each location so that a driver will know what power level is available at that station. And by color, they'll know what the plug type is. And with Chargeway, they will only be led to the stations that work for them. But if it's a station with a dual connector, if you're a Chevrolet Bolt driver, for example, and you arrive at this charge point station shown here, you would know you'd grab the green connector on the left because that's what you're shown you use, and that's what you were told to use when you bought your car at the dealership. And so what this then creates is an EV awareness, purchase, and experience journey for customers across the board. It's a universal way of explaining a new fuel type that allows each stakeholder and each brand within our ecosystem to succeed. A utility can then put out information in regards to the fact that electric fuel is available in their service area. When a consumer then arrives to an auto dealer, knowing that this information has been put out there, they could say, do you have a car that runs on electric fuel? My utility told me I should be looking for that. Then they can see what that looks like for the particular dealership they're at. And once they make the decision to make the purchase for an electric car, they can take that solution with them in their pocket with the Chargeway mobile app to allow them to only find what works for them, so they have continuity between the sales process and ownership experience. And then lastly, if they are doing workplace charging, they will know simply what a green 2 means at their workplace and how that will impact their charging experience in the same way they would know if they left work and went on a trip, they would know how to use fast charging if their vehicle is capable and understand the differences, because that will meet their daily needs. And so the new electric fuel customer experience is what we're looking to develop in a way to make electric cars competitive. Is instead of having design chaos as we have currently, which is very complex and complicated for a consumer to transition to, we develop a system that is easy to use and understand and becomes a system. And so any vehicle that you choose, for example, the Chevrolet Volt EV, you would know which stations to use for only your car based on using the software. And then when you arrive, it would be simple to see what that use case is based on the different station designs based on the vehicle you're driving. So this is a good example of how workplace charging could look for a driver that uses a green 2 when they're at work. But then maybe they will leave work and go to a different location and they want a little bit of a faster charge. They just simply turn up the number. They can look for a higher number and get a better charging experience. And in the same way, if they're on the highway road tripping, the station might look different, the network might be different, but they'll know it works for their need, and they will know what the power level means for what their experience should be. And so in short, what that creates then is a user experience with electric cars and most importantly, electric fuel that is easier to use and competitive to gasoline. And this then relates back to a driver's personal time. They can choose their vehicle and then know what these charge levels mean for their car and what their user experience will be with charging. And therefore, then they can travel and move with confidence using this new fuel type, and they can choose any electric car they want. And although there are differences in plug types and power levels, they'll know what that means independently for each car they might choose. And so this is not theoretical. We have actually started working on a program in Oregon alongside Portland General Electric and Pacific Power, working with them to put this information out to the world, both through their marketing and information they are putting out, as well as partnering with the Oregon Automotive Dealers Association and deploying the sales kiosks, the Chargeway Beacon, into the sales setting on behalf of the utilities to create a relationship between the utility and the auto dealers that provides a benefit to both. For the auto dealers, they have sales assistance that is there 24/7. It's simplified, so they don't have to relearn how to use and sell a car. It's just down to colors and numbers, which anybody can use and learn. And for the utilities, it provides them a footprint inside the auto dealer where they can get their message more clearly sent when someone's in the automotive buying process. And we also have been obviously partnering with Forth, and we appreciate their opportunity to speak to the webinar today. Forth is also providing us the ability to connect to other stakeholders such as yourselves. And then we're working with other stakeholders here in Oregon, including the Oregon Department of Transportation, on how we can implement across the state, as well as networks such as OpConnect, who we have already labeled their stations throughout Oregon with Chargeway labels. And so this we see as an opportunity to set the stage for how we can do this geographically anywhere in the United States or beyond. And we look forward to the opportunity to speak with more utilities that are interested in engaging in the conversation with electricity as a fuel. And we believe we can help you have a more compelling discussion with consumers and people that are in your service area. So thank you very much for the time today, and I'm happy to field some questions if there are any.
Thank you, Matt. And anybody that's interested in providing a question, please use the attendee chat function on the left side of your screen to pose a question. We're happy to moderate those questions and make sure that we get to as many as we can. So the first question is, will you be sharing this PowerPoint? And the answer to that is yes, we will. We intend to send out copies of the PowerPoint and this webinar to all the participants. Don't be shy. Please pose your questions, and we'll be happy to get them addressed. Well, seeing no questions, maybe I'll come up with a few of my own. So, Rendall, what do you see as the future of workplace charging for Avista over the next, say, 2 to 5 years?
Well, we'll be installing 30 more charging ports in the next year, and then from there we'll incrementally increase those that number up to the maximum of what the new parking structure will be able to handle, which is, I think, close to 150 total. We're going to deploy them in a ratio of 4 to 1, 4 being 20 amp circuits serving non-networked 16 amp J1772 connectors, and then 1 out of 5 being a 40 amp circuit serving a 32 amp unit.
And that's great. You said that you're still in the process of collecting data on the impact of the workplace charging in terms of how that's affected drivers and EV adoption. When do you expect to have that information available?
Well, I think that we should have an update on that here within a couple months. We know that we've got upwards of 50 commuters now. From just a few years ago, it was 4. So there's definitely a correlation. I don't think we'd have that many if we didn't have the workplace charging available.
That's great.
The larger question, that's for our own mission campus there in Spokane. The larger question is, how has this transpired with our customers with our pilot program where we've installed charging at their business? And so that'll be a part of our that'll be part of our final report that'll be issued this year, and that'll be public.
Great. Yeah, we're all looking forward to seeing that, because we've had this this real clear sense that workplace charging makes a significant difference. So I had a couple of questions here that are best addressed, I think, to Matt. The first is, will Chargeway be adding the ability to pay for kilowatt hours?
We're definitely looking at that implementation as to how we can partner with each network, for example, because obviously in working with making that possible, we have to be able to communicate with each network's payment APIs and systems. But that's definitely something we have on the radar for what we want to develop out and build in. And we have some projects forthcoming that we will be integrating that into to show examples to people later this year.
Great. Well, thank you. The second question is also for Matt. Can Chargeway indicate whether the chargers are available at a specific location?
That's also something we're looking to integrate. The current data that we're utilizing is a combination of crowdsourced data as well as data from the Department of Energy for the existing major networks. And as we grow out our relationships with each of the independent networks, we can get more granular information on their network availability, which does include real-time information for some, but not all of them. And so dependent on the network and their capabilities, we can then integrate to show if a station is in use, for example, we could simply gray it out onto our map.
Thank you. So this next question, I think I'll pose to both Rendall and Matt. The question is essentially, given that more than 80% of charging is done at home and that more and more EVs are of 150-mile range or more, do you see adoption becoming easier than, say, it was 3 years ago, with leaps since at the time electric vehicles only having a 100-mile range? So if I can paraphrase that, we see most of the charging still done at home. Do you see this trend towards electric vehicles with longer range increasing adoption?
Matt, you can take that one first if you like.
Okay, yeah. I definitely do see that the bigger the number for the range, the more comfortable someone will feel in the idea of purchasing the vehicle. The combination of factors are obviously the more range you have, the more comfortable you can feel about taking longer distance trips away from either home or things of that nature. We do need to remember that approximately only 50% of the United States does have dedicated parking at nighttime for overnight charging, whether that's in a driveway or a garage or underground parking, for example. It may be at a multi-use building. The other 50% of drivers are still going to have to contend with, even if they have the range, how can they still take advantage of fueling the vehicle, which is a big focus of what we're looking at with Chargeway, is whether they're charging at home or charging away from home based on their living situation. The range of the vehicle will certainly be a huge plus for people feeling comfortable, but they still need to know what the user experience is with that new fuel type for them to truly make, I think, the psychological leap. Because even if you can go the distance, even if an electric car can arguably go 500 miles on a charge, if you don't know how to make it do that again comfortably, it still becomes an issue for consumers to say, I'm not sure I can trust it, along with even auto dealers if they still can't explain how to make it work. We still feel that is fundamentally at the heart of one of the psychological barriers for consumers to comfortably make the decision to say, it goes the distance and I can make it go the distance again and again and again very easily. So every single thing that does happen that improves upon the technology is obviously a step forward. But I would hesitate to think that simply because the range is high enough that consumers will clamor immediately to using EVs, because there's still, again, the barrier of understanding how to make the trip replicable by understanding how to use the fuel.
Thank you. Rendall, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, echo that, and also though that regardless, for reasons that Matt mentioned, workplace charging will continue to have very high importance when it comes to adoption. A lot of people potentially don't have access to charging at home, and so workplace charging might be the main way that they actually can do that reliably, more so than public chargers.
Yeah, I think that's
100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's the vision that we share here at Forth as well. I do want to take this opportunity to remind everyone that Roadmap is coming up next month, June 18th and 19th at the Oregon Convention Center here in Portland. It'll be one of the largest electric shared and advanced mobility conferences in the country, and we're looking forward to getting as many of you to this conference as possible to really keep advancing electric mobility. We had a new question come in, and this question, I'm going to try to paraphrase it. Should we be doing more with the promotion of plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, thinking that, and this would include the Prius Prime or the Honda Clarity, to help customers realize that they can using the plug-in electric vehicle, make an intermediate step to all electric. So would either of you like to comment on that?
I think that, this is Matt with Chargeway. I think that one of the details within that is that we already have automotive manufacturers that are moving away from plug-in hybrids, such as Chevrolet, and again, arguably, it's because of the fact that the buyers that were purchasing the vehicle were predominantly driving on their electric range only, being that they were either only driving it locally, or they were really focused on trying to only use electricity as a fuel because of the reason why they bought the vehicle. So I do think there's still a huge place for plug-in electric hybrids, simply because as I view it, they're a lily pad car. They get you from pure gasoline to using electricity most of the time to using electricity all the time. Again, it still comes back to how do you market and explain the product and how it works. We've had many conversations with both Honda and Toyota as the example from the question. Both of those manufacturers still are having an issue with how do they explain how these vehicles differ, and how do they make it easy for a consumer to utilize it and understand how it fits into their daily life. And again, it comes back to explaining the fuel type. I think if it can be visualized more easily for consumers, then I think plug-in hybrids are a huge element of how we can transition, because most people that have used a plug-in hybrid know that if you're driving within your city limits or on your daily commute, about 90% or more of your driving can be done on electricity alone. And that is a huge step for reducing emissions. But then it gets back to what is the compelling sales solution for how those people can see what that looks like for them, as well as what is their living situation. This gets back to Rendall's point of, if those people don't have a place to charge overnight and their maximum range is anywhere from 30 to 50 miles, they will need to utilize something along the lines of workplace charging, and they'll need to know how that fits into their daily routine, by which also sales reps will need to know how to sell that. And again, to me, it always still comes back to what we're actually selling, which is the user experience with fuel. And if we need to simplify how that works, and then they can get back to enjoying the car.
Rendall, did you have a thought on this?
One thing to the question about should we be doing more to promote PHEVs is, I'm a little loath to promote something that the industry itself, the OEMs, don't seem to be producing much in terms of product. There are a fair amount of used vehicles, but, not a lot of new, and the trend seems to be going away. But it's a little bit mystifying to me, because to me it seems like that there's a definite important niche for PHEVs for folks that really do need to have one vehicle that can do it all. And So I'm not so sure how heavy we want to promote PHEVs when it seems like the OEMs are moving away from them.
Great, that's a great point. One thing I did want to point out in terms of our upcoming roadmap conference next month in Portland is both prior to the conference, we will be hosting a utility EV course. We call it 101, the basics of what you need to know to run a utility electric vehicle program. And then following the conference on June 20th, we'll be hosting a more advanced program on Utility 201, which is helping utilities understand how to take their existing EV programs to the next step. So if you are representing a utility and you are on this call, we would love to see you register. There's more information on our website at Roadmap, Fourth Mobility and /roadmap to find out more information on those two courses. And you should have my contact information up there on the screen. And please, happy to answer any questions. And please visit our website to gain more information. And with that, I think we will wrap up our webinar for today. I wanted to thank Matt Teske and Rendall Farley for their time and their great presentations. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.